Hello. Hello, hello. How we doing?
I'm still doing a little bit of a post draft assessment diagnostics. I'm running diagnostics right now
On yourself or on the players?
on myself,
Okay.
and we'll get into that. Originally, I had said, "Hey, let's jump on when the Raiders are done," and the Raiders had a later seventh round pick. I guess they traded that with the Chiefs
Uh,
um,
I guess they did.
to move into the sixth. That was the one with which they drafted Dylan Lobb. And so they only had seven. They started the day with three seventh rounders. They picked twice already. They don't have any left. Um, we
So
are in
they're
the
all done.
portion. We are in the portion of the draft where teams are drafting guys who are going to get paid less money than the UDFA's that they are making arrangements with on the phone right now. So, welcome Raider Nation. It's Biggs, Raider Damas. We're here, uncovered the Raiders Unrivaled, and we are going to go over this Raiders draft. Uh, and also, while UDFA players are going to be signed, we're going to be getting those updates and sharing them with you. So, stay tuned. Give us your comments in the chat and let us know what you think of these Raiders draft picks. Do you want to work backwards, or do you want to like
Yeah.
start with? Let's start with the first one.
The first one today, man, the Raiders they have nailed every single pick so far. And I haven't heard a bad word about any of them. They're all
Yep.
dogs. They all love football. They all love hitting other people, which is a plus when you play football. They just love to work and grind, and I think this is a sort of draft John Gruden would be proud of because there's a lot of grinders in this particular draft.
Yeah.
But my goodness, you could not have asked for a better draft from Tom Telesco in his first year as the Raiders GM. You really couldn't. He got just impact players at every spot that he took. And after the first round, we're all like, "Oh, Tom Telesco goes BPA all the time," and then
Right.
with every other pick in the draft, he filled a need, which
Right.
is fantastic. Uh, but if that was the best players on his board, then he went BPA as well. I wouldn't be surprised if that were in fact the case. Uh,
That's what I was going to ask. I was thinking. I was a little bit late. I said 5 minutes. I was a little bit late getting back because I had to take my dog out. And you know how when dogs just sit there and they don't do what they need to do, and you're in a hurry. That's what I was just dealing with. But while I was out there, I thought. Now we talked about Telesco taking BPA, but I feel like all of the picks since basically the third round. All the picks today were picks of need, picks to like fill depth on the 53 man roster, and so perhaps we've been doing needs the whole time, and
well,
Brock Bowers happened to be the BPA of need.
it's entirely possible that the team could look at it that way because beyond Michael Mayer, the team does not have a lot at tight end. And if Luke Getzey comes in and says, "I like to run two tight end sets," and you have Michael Mayer and Harrison Bryant, well, that's not really the best option that you could have. And
Exactly.
this was also an extremely weak draft for tight end outside of Bowers himself. So if you want to do that, if Getzey says, "Yeah, I like to run two tight end sets,"
That
and
depends on who you ask.
that's going to be a
I,
major weapon for you, then you're going to need somebody to make that work.
right, and I'm let's just say I'm plugged into tight end evaluation because of an acquaintance in the space who is basically like a tight end focused dude, and there's actually a lot of athleticism in this class. There are a few guys who are going to be inline only guys, and I mean they're all looking like they're dropping to UDFA. Um, or late round picks, Tanner McLaughlin from Arizona. There's a bunch of guys who are basically going to be inline tight ends, but there's a lot of athleticism in the class. Jaheim Bell, Jatavian Sanders. There's a lot of guys, and Brock Bowers is the best of them. So we picked. It seems like with Brock Bowers, we picked against type. It didn't seem like a Raiders pick, which is a good thing. It was something that I was looking for from Tom Telesco in this draft. The other picks, with the exception of Trey Taylor, none of them really stood out to me as typical Raiders picks either.
And they're not guys that you heard the Raiders ever linked to either. I mean, these aren't guys who like were visiting with the Raiders or that mock drafters say, I have sources that say the Raiders like this guy or that guy. Every single pick was more or less a shock, which I think is a good thing because you don't want guys in your front office blabbing to the media about or putting out billboards, as Telesco would say, about who you're going to take. Because then you have other teams jumping ahead of you for that guy. And the Raiders never made a trade in this entire draft. They stayed put and took who they wanted the entire time.
Well, did Jarrett pull the ultimate fast one in this draft? He visited the most running backs of any team of 32 in the NFL, and guess what? The Cowboys did not draft
a running back. They're just gonna sign the one they drafted like 10 years ago.
Or Rico Dowdle. They must like Rico Dowdle a whole lot. Okay, forget the Cowboys. Fuck the Cowboys. Cowboys can suck it. Let's go over this draft. First round, we took Brock Bowers. We've gone over that. If you want to get in the comments and tell us your Brock Bowers reaction, that would be great. Rafucho is in the building. What is up, Raf? Thanks for hopping in.
How are we doing, Capitan?
And so Brock Bowers. Shout out NorCal, eater of my pizza, Napa High School product, absolute stud at Georgia for 3 seasons, one of the best tight ends in the history of college football. We steal him at 13. That's the best player on the board. It's possible that the Raiders had somebody else in mind. Maybe they had Penix at 13, but Penix got taken by the Falcons, and we're sitting there, Telesco's sitting there going, well, shit. We can get Brock Bowers instead. Let's do that. So we take Brock Bowers. Go back and watch yesterday's reaction show, and you'll hear all of our thoughts on that. Hopefully, you were watching as we were talking about the second round and JPJ, Jackson Powers Johnson, who the Raiders drafted right as Raider Damas was exiting. So let's go ahead and talk about that. When you watch Oregon Ducks football, you got to see him quite a bit. Actually, you know what? I'm remembering incorrectly. We did talk a lot about it.
We did, because I predicted not a few minutes before he was taken that the Raiders would.
That's what I was thinking of. That's what I was thinking of.
Okay. I said, what if Jackson Powers Johnson is the highest player rated on Tom Telesco's big board? And sure enough, he was.
So JPJ, starting center at Oregon, 6'3", 328 pounds. He's a little short to play guard. He's a little heavy to play center. That makes him a tweener and perfect for A, offensive line versatility, get in where you fit in, and B, they said that they drafted him as guard. So right guard, across from Parham. Maybe he usurps Andre James, maybe not. But I think both of us were very, very happy with the picks, with the pick of Jackson Powers Johnson. If you were happy with the pick too, go ahead and comment.
He allowed no sacks in his career at Oregon. He allowed 1 pressure and well over 700 pass blocking snaps. This is not a guy who's going to let anybody through. He compares very favorably to Jason Kelsey. He's a mauler. He's mean. He will pancake you. Without discretion. He's very aggressive, very energetic, very high motor, likes to destroy people. He's a big boy, and he knows it, and he uses it.
So here's a question for you. We have Andre James, who is a center. He can't really play anywhere else, and he's very small. He gets thrown around. Now we have Cody Whitehair, who has played guard and center. We have Dylan Parham, who was a college center, went to the Senior Bowl as a center, and we have been playing him at guard. And now we have Jackson Powers Johnson, who's a center that can play guard. That's three guys, Whitehair, Powers Johnson, and Parham, that all show versatility in that interior offensive line. Is it possible that they kind of shuffle around and somebody like Whitehair winds up at right guard and JPJ winds up at center, or Parham winds up at center and Whitehair on the left side?
If I were to give you the Raiders' best possible offensive line right now, it would have Jackson Powers Johnson at center, Whitehair at right guard, and Thayer Munford at right tackle.
Munford, okay. So no love for Parham.
Parham at left guard. I left out the left side of the line entirely because I don't think there's any question about that. Colt Miller and Dylan Parham at the two left tackle, left guard slots.
Okay.
So I don't think there's any question that those are the best guys available there.
Okay, now the third round, which is what we didn't get to with you yesterday. DJ Delmar Glaze out of University of Maryland, 6'4", 315 pounds, long, strong tackle. I love this pick. Love it. He has one of the highest floors of any of the offensive linemen that were in the draft. He's not necessarily going to become the right side equivalent to Colton Miller. He's not going to be, like an Orlando Brown. He's not going to be like your right-hand side immovable Pro Bowler. But his floor is a starter in the NFL that's going to be good.
Mm-hmm. He will at very least be serviceable. If you look at the PFF pass blocking ratings for the last year, Jackson Powers Johnson is the best offensive lineman at pass blocking. But DJ Glaze was number 6. He was not that far behind. DJ Glaze is an exemplary pass blocker. Maryland, for absolutely no reason whatsoever, had a very explosive pass offense. And they had Tua Tagovailoa's little brother running the show at quarterback last year. And he very rarely got touched. And the whole Maryland line was pretty much a bunch of overachievers, and DJ Glaze was chief amongst them. The wonderful thing about him is he started several games at both left and right tackle in his career, so he can do either one. The Raiders really like guys who are versatile, as we just discussed. I think DJ Glaze is going to be like a Khalif Barnes type who will fill in both the left and right side and can make starts effectively in either one. I'm not sure if he's going to win the right tackle job immediately over Thayer Munford, but I think he has a shot down the road to slide into that spot.
Well, setting aside the unfortunate memes that can be made from his name, if you are a dirty person, since his name is DJ, can we just start calling him Donut, similar to Jelly Ellis? Just call him Donut Glaze.
Would that see why not?
There we go. We got a nickname for him already. So from Steve Munch, powerful punch to knock pass rushers off balance and pass protection and jolt linebackers when he climbs to the second level. So in our zone read running game, he's going to be out there in front. He's going to be paving the way for Zamir White and maybe somebody else we'll talk about in a second.
Yeah. All
right. In the fourth round, we picked DeCamarion Richardson, 6'2", 188 pounds, cornerback out of Mississippi State. I compared him. I basically said that he is tall Amik. The guy isn't afraid. He's no Deion Sanders. He's not afraid to get his nose into the business and mix it up and take down ball carriers and stuff. He is a hitter from the cornerback position. He's also very, very long. He's fast. He plays good press coverage, but he does kind of get beat when both the receiver and the defensive back start to break off the line. He can hold him down in press, but once there's release, he has a little bit of a hard time keeping up with the receiver in their route. I don't know if that's a flexibility or agility issue. I don't think it's a speed issue because he is pretty fast. But another pick that I really, really like, 4th round cornerback.
He reminds me of Jonathan Abram as a corner. Not the best ball skills in the world. Richardson did not have an interception in college, but loves to hit people. He's a very willing tackler. He will come up and destroy you in the run game, or if you catch a ball in front of him. From what I've heard from Mississippi State fans, a lot of that was on coaching. He was very good in coverage a couple of years ago, and then they changed coaching staffs, and suddenly he was garbage at coverage. That's not something that's necessarily on him. I think when Antonio Pierce and the defensive coaching staff get their hands on this guy, he's going to turn into something really special. I think he has the potential, the measurables to turn into a premier corner in the league. I'd be surprised if he wasn't at least above average by the time his development is done. I really am pretty excited about what the Raiders have got in this guy.
And iron sharpens iron. And if you've got somebody like Jack and you've got somebody like Nate, and these guys are all like pooling together and coaching up the young kid. Plus, it's a Patrick Graham defense. Plus, our defensive backfield is not going to be spending a whole lot of time in coverage with this defensive line that we have. So there's a good possibility that any flaws that he might have might be covered by our pass rush. And then if it turns out to be a run look, he's going to be mixing it up and taking the ball carrier down. So really, really, really love that pick. All right. Next one. Let me just get
might be my favorite.
Next one. Let me get to my notes. All right. So in the 5th round, we went and we grabbed a 6'2", 233-pound Denzel Perryman clone. I mean, he's a little bit bigger than Denzel, but not a whole lot. Solid, prototypical, classic Raiders middle linebacker, run stopper, the highest graded linebacker out of Ohio State, Tommy Eichenberg, who you and I had mocked a couple times to the Raiders. What a hell of a pick.
Man, I tweeted that he reminds me of James Laurinaitis, the former Ohio State linebacker. Mm-hmm. And I said that makes sense because James Laurinaitis was his linebackers coach because he's the current linebackers coach at Ohio State. Right. So basically, he is exactly what the Raiders need as far as middle linebacker goes because Robert Spillane, his contract is going to be up next year. But this guy will spend at least one season learning under Robert Spillane to do exactly what Robert Spillane does, and that's to fuck things up. Robert Spillane gets in there. He doesn't have the greatest coverage skills in the world, although he did have a number of really key interceptions last season. But Robert Spillane is a disruptor. Robert Spillane is incredibly violent and aggressive, and that's exactly what Tommy Eichenberg can do. If you watch any Ohio State game, you will see Tommy Eichenberg is always around the ball. He's always making plays. He's always messing things up for the other team. He's a very, very nice blitzer. He can get in there and sack the quarterback pretty effectively with stunts going on in front of him, and he can rush the passer when it's called for from the middle linebacker position, which is not something you see a ton in the NFL, but it's something the Raiders do like to do. This guy reminds me of like a Phil Villapiano type. The Raiders have had guys like this before, and they've always been effective. And these are the kind of guys that Raider Nation absolutely loves. These are guys, we talk about Gruden grinders. This guy is a Gruden grinder. This guy will come in with his hard hat on. I'm not trying to be cliche or anything, but that's the kind of player he is. Just like every other person the Raiders drafted loves football is something that's said about him. And this guy takes that to the extreme. This guy eats, breathes, sleeps and dreams football. And that's the kind of guys we need.
When I was watching his tape, his highlights and stuff, I was getting Greg Biekert vibes.
We haven't had a guy like that in an awfully long time until Spillane came on the team.
6'2", 233. Well, let's give Denzel Perryman some credit. He was one of the leading tacklers and one of the best run game defenders in football while he was with the Raiders.
He's pretty underrated, honestly, and I'm kind of sad we didn't have him for longer than we did, but he was really effective, and I think Eichenberg can be similarly so.
Better to get out too early than too late.
True.
All right. Basically, He's a fundamentally sound and reliable tackler. He gets to depth and reads quarterbacks' eyes in underneath zone coverage. One of the things that kind of stood out to me again was that he's not going to be a coverage linebacker. He's purely a run stopper. I don't know if we've ever had a coverage linebacker that I've been satisfied with.
I can't remember the last time the Raiders had one at all.
Right. We have them that we throw out there, but it's been a while since we've had one I liked.
At least you can start Travis Kelce against the Raiders this year again with the confidence that he'll have some success.
Yeah. All right. Our next pick, the 32nd pick in the 632. Dylan Lobb. Okay. Let's talk about this one. 5'10", 206 pounds from FBS New Hampshire. Now, I'm somewhat excited about this pick. And the reason I say that is because over the last 6 weeks, 2 months, 3 months that we have been talking about this Raiders draft, one of the things that I have been trying to push is the idea of getting a quality third down running back, a pass catching running back into the building. It started off with talking about Bucky Irving. The more that I dug, the less I was in on Bucky Irving and the more I was in on Will Shipley. Will Shipley basically comps to Jahmyr Gibbs only without the draft capital. He's almost as fast as Jahmyr Gibbs. He's a little bit bigger. He's as explosive. It's extraordinary to me that Jahmyr Gibbs went as early as he did and Will Shipley went as late as he did. Maybe it's a Caucasian thing. I don't know. However, Dylan Lobb is that guy. He returned kicks and punts at New Hampshire. He had over 1,200 all-purpose yards in 2023, including 700 yards receiving. The guy is an absolute scrapper. We got a buddy, shout out Chef Jay Beasy of the Undroppables, who saw a bunch of his games this last year, says he's an absolute beast. He's going to come in. I get shades of DeAndre Washington, that type of role. At a certain point, he's going to take over. He's going to make Amir Abdullah completely expendable.
Abdullah is as good as gone. He needs to sell his house.
Yeah, I mean, it could be as soon as the 53-man roster release, right? So he's going to, like DeAndre Washington, he's going to be able to return kicks. He's going to be able to come in on third down. He has one of the highest grades in pass blocking among running backs in college football. So he's going to be able to be out there. He had a game with almost 300 yards receiving from the running back position. He's a really, really skilled route runner. And to grab somebody like that and in the 6th round, and eventually if he becomes basically like the main starter, we've got comps to DeAndre Washington basically like because of the role. Talent-wise, we have comps to Chase Edmonds, who has dealt with some injuries, hasn't had the greatest career, but as far as athletes are concerned, and also he's run into some bad luck as far as like system fit and things like that in the places that he's gone. But Chase Edmonds, talent-wise, is really, really good. Danny Woodhead is another comp to that Dylan Lobb carries.
That's the one I was hearing, and Austin Eckler as well.
And I was going to get to that. So the Danny Woodhead one, Woodhead was a little bit faster than Lobb is, but similar types of players. The final comp is to Austin Eckler, and what makes that comp so apt is that both of them were undersized, slow, super strong, guys from smaller schools in the FBS, on the fringe of being drafted as a late round pick or UDFA as Eckler was, and somehow turned into the right role and became a super productive back in the NFL. So I am so happy we got Lobb. I saw a guy in the grocery store a couple months ago, and he was wearing a University of New Hampshire sweatshirt. And I walked up to him and I was like, did you go to UNH? And he goes, no, my sister does. And I said, do you play fantasy football? And he said, yeah. I said, look out for Dylan Lobb. This kid is legit. And then the Raiders drafted him, and that makes me happy.
When I think of running backs who are equally as good or possibly even better at receiving than are running, there's a couple of guys that come to mind. not necessarily Danny Woodhead or Chase Edmonds or anything like that. I think of first and foremost Roger Craig, former Raiders legend, Niners legend. And I also think of Brian Westbrook, who made his name for the Philadelphia Eagles about 20 years ago. If you have a guy like that, it opens up the offense for so many things, especially if they're as good a pass blocker as Dylan Nave is. This guy is going to make the team. He's going to be a stud. He's going to be somebody that the Raiders utilize a lot more than you think they will, because Amir Abdullah got a lot more chances than he probably ought to have, just because he was so reliable on third down. This guy is going to be an absolute steal, because he would have been comfortably taken, and nobody would have complained if he was taken in the third round. The Raiders made a habit in the late rounds of getting guys who should have been third and fourth round picks, and they took them 2 or 3 rounds later than they could have. And that's called draft value. That's called draft stealing, and that's what we saw from the Raiders today. And it's really nice, to draft a guy in the 7th round who should have gone the 3rd, instead of drafting a guy in the 3rd who should have gone in the 8th.
Right, or in the 1st that should have gone undrafted. Another couple comps. You made me think of Charlie Garner, receiving back.
He's another that was very successful as a Raider and a Niner.
Yeah, and then I saw a video of fantasy guru Josh Larkey, who comped him to James White, but with juice. I don't hate that. I don't hate that at all.
Can I say something for a second? I mentioned the Niners a couple of times, and the Niner fans. I have read that the Niner fans are not particularly excited about Ricky Pearsall, their first-round receiver out of Florida. They're all insane. Ricky Pearsall is the man. Ricky Pearsall is incredibly reliable. He's incredibly athletic. He's going to be a superstar. Trust me on this one. I have watched him play. The man is fantastic. Don't believe the unhype that Ricky Pearsall is some bum. He's not. He's fantastic.
They also grabbed Jacob Cowing. Am I correct?
I believe they did.
Cowing is better than Pearsall. They got Cowing way later than Pearsall.
Pearsall's no slouch. People are treating him like he's garbage.
Digging into some analytics a little bit, he's not totally garbage. He shows up in the model ahead of Keon Coleman, Jermaine Burton, Xavier Legette, Jalen Polk, and A.D. Mitchell. Right behind Brian Thomas and Roman Wilson. So, and crazy enough, Brendan Rice is ahead of all those guys, and dropped.
Good for the Chargers.
I was very angry. We'll get to that a little bit later when we talk about our hits and misses. But next we had Trey Taylor, Air Force safety, 5'10", 209 pounds, enjoys being shot out of a cannon into your chest.
Trey Taylor is 5'10". I thought he was 6 foot. Hold on a second.
5'10". NFL bloodlines. He's
listed at 6'0", 213 on the Raiders draft tracker.
Oh, ESPN has him at 5'10", 209.
Well, somebody's lying to me. Because I'm on the Raiders website right now looking at their draft tracker, and they have him at 6'0", 213.
Who's lying? But yeah, he's a cousin of Ed Reed, or okay, no, I was thinking of the nephew of Hank Aaron, cousin of Ed Reed. So he's got NFL bloodlines. He's got that pedigree. And I saw some scuttlebutt around the Twitter machine that people who have been watching Air Force games, they're like, he's always around the ball. He's a huge hitter. Maybe he can become what we wanted Jonathan Abram to be. Maybe he can be our run stopping missile from the defensive backfield. High hopes for that guy, but not a lot of investment when we got him as late as we did. So not a big loss.
He was the winner of the Jim Thorpe Award last year, which is the nation's best defensive back collegiate award, which had previously been won by Trayvon Merrick. So this guy has a lot of talent. He's got some pedigree in him. He's going to be a core special teamer to start his career, and he'll be depth and safety. But it wouldn't surprise me if within 2 or 3 years if he moves into a starting role.
And if he won the best safety award, it kind of tells you how the NFL values safeties,
which is not much,
right?
But if you have a good one, they can really make an impact.
and we have a few good ones at this point. All right, and then rounding it out with our final pick in the draft, we have Pittsburgh cornerback MJ Devonshire. I'm going to say Devonshire.
That's how it should be
My
pronounced.
my grandparents lived off of Devonshire, and so I grew up. They lived on Haverhill, off of Devonshire. Of course, when I was little, that was Haverhill off of Devonshire. Um, uh, has the speed to shadow receivers, stay in the hip pocket, trailing in press coverage, long arms, led the ACC in pass breakups per game last season. I like that. I like
Yeah,
that a lot.
this is our actual Amik Robertson replacement. This guy has a similar attitude, a similar playmaking nature. As you said, always around the ball, which seems to be a theme for the Raiders draft picks this year, especially on defense. Just always making plays, super aggressive, very good sticky cover corner. Pat Narduzzi posted something on Twitter. Absolutely loves the kid. So I think he could turn into something. I'm not sure if he's going to be a starting boundary corner within the next 4 or 5 years, but he'll be a key guy in depth on the defense, no question.
But he did return kicks in college. So if we got a special teams bullet that can return punts, and is a former wide receiver, which is probably it says he has small hands. He probably wasn't very great at catching the ball, which is probably why he led the ACC in pass breakups, because there were interceptions that he turned into PDs.
Well, the Raiders have had some wide receivers who have led the league in pass breakups. I'll tell you that.
Right. So it's probably why he made the switch to cornerback. But yeah, I really, really, really like that pick too. Tom Telesco absolutely hit this draft out of the park. I have a long history, a long record of being happy after the draft because I talk myself into guys. And let's face it, maybe 3 of these guys are going to be any good. But I like the potential of every single one of them. That, I think, is the difference. There aren't a lot of guys where I'm looking at going, why the fuck did we just waste a draft pick on Tanner Muse? All due respect to Josh Jacobs, why did we take a running back in the first round? Those kinds of moves throughout like the recent history of Raiders drafts, there wasn't anything like that. Everybody was basically, with the possible exception of Glaze, everybody was taken at an appropriate time, or better than they were ADP fallers. Basically, we got them at a discount, rather than reaching for anybody. And that just makes me so happy. It shows a different direction that the Raiders are in, a direction that I've been hungry for the Raiders to be in for almost my entire life, or at least the amount of time that I've been really, really focused and concentrating on what the Raiders front office does, right? Because, when you're 12, 13, you really don't give a shit. But in the time that I've been kind of like focused and really care about what they do, they never really do what I want. And it's not like they took the players that I wanted. There was a certain point at the end of the 6th round where I really wanted them to grab Brendan Rice and Michael Pratt. Let's get out of here with a Raiders legacy and, a potential like future quarterback. They didn't do that. They stuck to the plan. They grabbed 2 defensive backs. And I'm totally fine with that. I was not a huge Tom Telesco believer going into immediately post hire, but seeing him work, I'm a lot more bought into what he's doing and the relationship that he seems to have with the rest of the staff as a whole. Maybe we're an 8 or 9 win team this year, but
every pick
that's going to change.
Every pick we took has the talent to stick in the NFL. Everyone. And that hasn't always been the case. And the coaching staff we have has the ability to develop players to stick in the NFL. So if any of these cats that we just took don't stick in the NFL, it's on them. It's not on Telesco, and it's not on the Raiders organization. If they don't succeed, it's because they didn't work hard enough. All of these guys have the ability to stick on the roster, or on somebody's roster at least.
I think that you're getting that a little bit backwards. Yes, they are all talented enough to stick on the roster, but if they don't, I think it's going to come down to a problem in house with the structure of the development of the players. It's kind of like this. There's a brand of hot dogs that's out there. They're like Wagyu beef or whatever. They're like $10-12 a package. They're the best hot dogs at the grocery store, right? And if you bring them home and you throw them in a pot of boiling water or a microwave and cook them, they're not going to be very good. But if you steam them for 7 minutes and then throw them on the grill, that's going to totally be the difference. So what we need to know now, are the Raiders the microwave or pot of boiling water, or are they the steam and grill?
Well, I think with Josh McDaniels, they were the pot of boiling water, but I think with Antonio
Yes.
Pierce, they're going to be more like the grill. And that, that's why I say, the problem a lot of the really good teams have is they have a logjam at a lot of positions, and they keep drafting those positions just because they go BPA a lot. And then, a lot of really good players just straight up don't make it. The Raiders are in a position where they don't necessarily have that luxury, and especially because they took a lot of positions of need in this draft. So if any of these particular set of players don't make it, I think you have to look at them just for this particular set of guys that we're seeing here.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I understand what you're saying. I'm still gonna disagree with you. I think that I think the vision of Antonio Pierce and the structure in the organization that the Raiders have right now is they will get the highest potential out of these players.
Yeah.
The guys on the defensive side of the ball, they're going to come over and they're going to be entering a culture with Max Crosby, Christian Wilkins. They're going to be amongst dogs, and that's going to turn them into dogs.
I agree. Now,
having
said what I just said, if any of these guys that we just drafted don't make the team, I will be really, really surprised, because I think all of them have the potential to be impact NFL players.
Right. We agree. We totally agree on that. What I'm saying is that the Raiders are the steam and grill. We are going to get, I've never felt this way before. We are going to get the most out of these guys. So real quickly, we're still waiting on UDFA news to come in. Aside from the Eagles draft, aside from the Broncos draft, for me personally, aside from the Chargers draft, are there any guys that you thought that we kind of whiffed on? Maybe 3
that we didn't take that we should have.
Yeah, or could have.
Peyton Wilson, I think he was there, and I think, but if you're targeting, Tommy Eichenberg, then Peyton Wilson is superfluous.
And Peyton Wilson had some injury issues.
Yeah. I mean, but there were like a receiver would have been nice in the draft, but you only have so many picks, and I'd be shocked if they didn't have 3 or 4 receivers as undrafted free agents either. So it's hard to say, because I really like everyone they took. I mean, even people were yelling for TJ Tampa, and he's stiff as a board and strictly a zone corner, and they took Richardson instead. And I don't mind taking Richardson there because Tom Telesco told us straight out, we're looking for traits, we're looking for physical things about a player, and some of the people that the Raider Nation was clamoring for just don't have that. Right. So I can't necessarily point to anyone the Raiders should have drafted and didn't, because they're looking for specific things that maybe the fan base either doesn't care about or isn't privy to.
Absolutely, and that's one of the things that I think has been different with this draft class, is that there aren't a lot of guys that anybody is unhappy with. Day in the life checking in, and these are 2 guys that I have talked about, and I I wanted Jordan Travis. You talked about Jordan Travis. I talked about Jordan Travis.
Sure.
The idea of Jordan Travis coming in and sitting back for a couple years to develop, especially given the quality of play at Florida State, and then Brendan Rice, of course. There is, at some point, we do kind of have to look at the fact that Brendan Rice fell to the middle of the 7th round as a wide receiver among tens of wide receivers. That has to mean something as far as his value to the rest of the NFL. I never wanted Brendan Rice to be a Raider because of the qualities of Brendan Rice or the potential of Brendan Rice throughout his career. I wanted him to be a Raider because his dad was Jerry Rice, Raider legend. Jordan Travis is a different thing. If we drafted a quarterback in this draft, I would have liked it to have been Jordan Travis. But when you look at everything as a whole through all 7 rounds, the fact that there were certain things that we were looking for that didn't happen, like quarterback, and certain things that did happen, like beefing up the defensive backfield, you have to think that was Tom Telesco's plan in the beginning, and we didn't whiff on a quarterback because they're fine with AOC, and that's what we're going to be going into the 2024 season with in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. Jordan Travis was a guy, after pick 12 in this draft, no quarterback was taken for a very, very long time.
Mm-hmm.
The Raiders felt that there was a big drop-off after the 3rd quarterback taken. And after Michael Penix was taken, I think it really, sent a lot of teams into more or less a tailspin and ruined the draft for an awful lot of people. The Falcons, as usual, screwed things up for everybody. But after pick 12, there was an even bigger drop-off than that. I think the Raiders absolutely should not do what so many teams have done and get themselves into that 4th, 5th, 6th round quarterback purgatory where you have a guy who is good enough to play but not good enough to win.
Right.
So I am perfectly happy with them doing exactly what I said they should do 2 nights ago and set the stage for Arch Manning, 2026 Raiders starting quarterback.
They're going to have to start trading away some shit to get the 101 in the 2027 draft.
Tank for Manning.
Right, because we plan on winning some games. Damn.
Trading with the Panthers for their 2026 first rounder. Is that possible? We can do that now?
We got to do that quick.
We do. They don't need it. They got Bryce Young. They don't need Arch Manning. What the fuck?
So one of the things about drafting is that it tells you a lot about what Tom Telesco, Antonio Pierce, Luke Getsy, and names just leave my head. It's ridiculous what the organization is looking for. But what it also does is it tells you what they're not looking for. They're not looking to replace Aiden O'Connell as starting quarterback of the 2024 Las Vegas Raiders. That was something that I went into January talking about. Build the team. Don't waste the draft capital jumping up and getting Jaden Daniels or JJ McCarthy or whomever. Am I happy that they didn't come out of this draft with Jaden Daniels? Not necessarily. Or JJ McCarthy? Not necessarily. But the fact that they show confidence in Aiden O'Connell has to mean a whole lot. What do you think? What do you think's going on with Bailey Zappi and Jacoby Brissett right now? The stupid ass New England Patriots spent high draft capital to draft Drake May, and then grab Hilton later on in the draft. They now have 4 quarterbacks in the building, one of whom, Drake May, is probably going to be their starter. Joe Milton, who is probably going to wash out of the league at some point because all he is Ryan Leaf's arm. Bailey Zappi, who at one point last year was the best quarterback in the building in New England. And then Jacoby Brissett, who everybody thinks is actually going to be the starter while Drake May. So they're not carrying 4 quarterbacks.
Well, I saw a picture on Twitter today, or perhaps yesterday, and it was Kirk Cousins on the bench in a Washington Redskins uniform, and the caption was, "What do you mean you just drafted my replacement?" And if you look behind him, he's sitting next to Robert Griffin III, and Kirk Cousins was drafted as his replacement 3 rounds later than Robert Griffin was. So this is it's funny to see two quarterbacks drafted by the same team in the same draft because the old saying goes, if you have two quarterbacks, you don't have any. I think one of them, just like all the other New England quarterbacks, is superfluous. I'm not sure which one it is. I suspect it's Milton, but somebody's going to see Milton throw 80 yards in the preseason and lose their mind and try to trade for him. So I don't mind them doing that if they think he's a good investment.
Ladies and gentlemen,
somebody's probably going to work out.
Ladies and gentlemen, and otherwise, we have breaking news.
What do you got?
Jeffrey, excited for our UDFA class. We have our first signing.
Hey.
The son of longtime NFL coach and offensive coordinator Gus Bradley. South Alabama quarterback Carter Bradley is now our practice squad arm.
Oh, my God. I thought he was a defensive coordinator. Is that right?
Gus Bradley was, yeah.
Yeah, you said offensive.
No,
but I do know who that is. That's the former Jaguars head coach, right?
Yeah, I don't know why I would have. Gus Bradley was our defensive coordinator.
He was.
My lips must have slipped. So yeah, he was mostly a backup for 4 seasons at Toledo before transferring and starting 2 seasons at South Alabama.
Man,
so
the portal's a hell of a drug, dude.
6th-year senior.
Well, he also played during COVID, so he got that extra year of eligibility, I'm sure.
Sure. But to go from Toledo to South Alabama, that's a very lateral move.
He is now 34 years old. He has 3 children.
Right.
He goes to Denny's and gets the senior discount.
So somebody in the comments, look it up real quick. Is Carter Bradley, is he older than Aiden O'Connell? Just because
he's older than JJ McCarthy, I can tell you that.
Absolutely, yeah, he's at least 3 or 4 years older than JJ McCarthy. So back to Jordan Travis real quick.
Yes.
If you had a genie pop out of a bottle and give you one wish, you could either be Jordan Travis or Spencer Rattler today. Would you rather be in New York with Garrett Wilson and learning behind Aaron Rodgers, or would you rather be in New Orleans behind DC4 and?
Well, as you can easily see about me, I'm a man who likes to eat. So I obviously would prefer to be in New Orleans simply for the beignets and for the crawfish. New York has some lovely restaurants, I'm sure, but what they don't have is Bourbon Street. And what they don't have is the delectable fresh seafood that you would, and Cajun cooking that you would find down there. So simply for the reason that people in New Orleans do not like Derek Carr, and the second that Spencer Rattler signs with that team, he's going to be the most popular man in the city. I would prefer to have been drafted by the Saints. Now, Jordan Travis, on the other hand, is in a good spot because the Jets just traded Zach Wilson to the hapless-ass Broncos. And so the Jets don't have a plan at quarterback beyond whenever Aaron Rodgers decides to hang it up, which could very well be tomorrow. We don't know. The man is 87 years old. He's walking on one leg, and maybe he just goes and does a darkness retreat for the rest of his life. But Jordan Travis is sitting pretty there. You know, whenever Aaron Rodgers' shoulders decide to disintegrate, he can just step in, and he has a pretty darn good team around him. I mean, Jordan Travis is in a good spot. God bless him. He'll be just fine.
Yeah, I would much as I love Derek Carr, I would much rather be Jordan Travis today than Spencer Rattler.
I'd rather be Jordan Travis in New Orleans.
Yes. I mean, yeah, Daisy Dukes off Bourbon Street is one of the best cafes I've ever been to. Their $8 bottomless hurricanes had me sideways.
Jambalaya is one of the greatest inventions man has ever created.
Jambalaya and gumbo are 2 of my favorite things to make, and I love it. I benefit from having family in Louisiana, so I get to go down there and on vacations and savor that stuff quite often. There's not a lot more UDFA tracker stuff coming in. And
we can always discuss that on our regular show on Thursday if we don't have anything before we end up here.
We absolutely can. Or is Matt Holder just kind of, is he dropping the ball? Matt Holder went after me today on Twitter. That was fun.
You have
I made
beef
fun.
now?
I made he said something uh, about Oregon, University of Oregon, and something about fourth. And I said, yeah, well, they're the fourth best team in the Pac-12, so that fits. And and he posted a meme about no intelligent life detected, which was a pretty good tete-a-tete, I have to say. I
Does the
was
Pac-12 even exist anymore? I mean, when are they officially done?
no, but 2023, and obviously I know that Oregon is better at football than Cal, but I still had to get the dig in. It's part
How
of
is
growing
better at like science and reading and all that dumb shit that nobody cares about?
up. Yeah, fuck science or something like that. Who reads?
I know, right?
He says reading. Oh, we got another Washington State edge rusher. Ron Stone Jr. has
Speaking
signed.
of Washington State, I don't mind that the Raiders didn't draft a quarterback this year because Cam Ward, who transferred from Washington State to, I believe, Miami, will be in the draft next year. And he's the man, and I would love him to be on the Raiders.
Did we sign Austin Reed? Did we sign
I,
Austin?
I don't know. I've been hanging out with you.
Jeremy Fowler reports Washington State edge Ron Stone Jr., who had 16 career sacks at the Palouse. TCU lineman Andrew Coker is signing with the Raiders. Joseph Suman.
Oh no, 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 no.
Give me some.
Former UCLA running back Carson Steele is signing with the Chiefs.
That's okay.
I know, but I had him mocked to the Raiders, and I was really excited about that. And now I'm sad.
Joseph Suman. But when we talked about him on the show, I said he was a possible UDFA, which that's not.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And the Chiefs love them some UDFAs. My generic Prince shares from last year. One of the most historic athletic running backs at the combine, like didn't see any action. He was supposed to take over for Pacheco on all my fantasy teams, but he didn't. Joseph Suman, I need you to comment again and clarify this. Did we sign Austin Reed? Andrew Coker, TCU. He signed. Let's get some updates.
Reed is signing with, you mean Western Kentucky quarterback Austin Reed?
Yeah.
He signed with the Bears.
Okay. I wanted to clarify whether or not Suman wanted him, because I wanted him. I absolutely wanted him.
He signed with the Bears like 20 minutes ago. That's old news.
I had him in Debbie, and he did me right. Plus, he made was it Javon Baker?
And shout out to Western Kentucky Hilltoppers for having the best mascot in all of sports.
Yeah, and shout out to Raiders fan and friend of the show, comedian Billy Wayne Davis, who went to Western Kentucky and went on my Fantasy Burn show when I interviewed Billy Wayne Davis, who I'm opening for on June 1st at the Punchline in Sacramento. We talked about Western Kentucky, and I clued him in on Austin Reed and told him he should be rooting for him and stuff.
Hilltoppers represent.
I used to play baseball with a guy that was a pitcher for the Hilltoppers when he was in college.
My favorite mascot is the Hilltopper mascot. Second favorite is Otto the Orange from Syracuse. I believe third is Puddles the Duck from Oregon, and fourth has to be the Stanford Tree.
Other than the fact that Oski is number one, I'm not going to.
I love the Stanford Tree just because Stanford takes itself so goddamn seriously, and the tree doesn't.
And it's a tree.
It's a tree.
Right.
And I love that. I absolutely love that.
I have an affinity for Oski, not just because it's the Cal mascot, but because all he does is just walk with his head down and his arms back behind him. That's all he does. He doesn't dance. He doesn't do flips. He doesn't do anything. He just walks.
That's kind of how Cal operates, isn't it?
And his costume, his countenance, his what he's made of is like the same that it's been since like the 50s.
Oh,
It's
and shout
amazing.
out to Evergreen State in Washington for the Gooey Duck mascot, which might be
That's
the
a good
most
one.
creative one.
I do have when I lived in Seattle, I had friends that had gone to Evergreen.
And I believe UC Santa Cruz isn't. Are they the banana slugs? Am I getting that
They are
right?
the banana slugs.
Okay, that's also pretty cool. I
And
love
there's
non-traditional weirdo mascots.
like the terriers. I like the terriers. I have a terrier. God loves a terrier. Um,
Man, those live animal mascots like the Colorado Buffalo Ralphie and all the dogs in the SEC are pretty neat too. And
yeah.
Mike the Tiger from LSU. It's hard to get better than having a live ass tiger on your sideline. That's pretty cool.
And if you're in Baton Rouge,
And
you can
Bevo
swing
from
by and see
Texas.
him.
Bevo from Texas,
Bevo's,
man.
Bevo's
Him
good.
and Uga the bulldog almost got into it a couple of years ago at the Sugar Bowl.
I
That
like
was wild, dude. I love that.
Now the Washington Huskies have traditionally had this family of huge Malamutes, like seriously, like 200-pound Huskies. And way back in '92, when I was living in Seattle, there was one that the owner would walk him on the Ave, and his name was King. King the Husky, the mascot of the University of Washington Huskies. And so we'd see King every once in a while. And then I had a buddy who had a rot that was like 140 pounds. And we used to joke, how funny would it be if you were walking Apollo one day and they were walking King and they happened to meet? Because they're literally like two of the biggest non-Great Dane dogs I've ever seen in my entire life. And one day it happened. They came
Oh
across each
man.
other. And it was like, I have 100-pound dog and I don't have any problem holding him back, although I can feel his strength.
Mhm.
I can't even imagine these two dogs like going after each other, and how hard those owners, who are not as big and strong as me, how much trouble they had holding these two dogs back from each other. Um, King was enormous, and Apollo the Rottweiler had a head that was like, there's not a lot of context on this on video, but my head is 7 7/8, and Apollo's head was like this much bigger than mine. It
Oh
was
man.
ridiculous.
I think it would have been even more dangerous if Mike the Tiger were Washington's mascot instead.
Yeah, there's not a lot of other mascots that Mike the Tiger wouldn't have his way with.
Oh man, that he's so cool. And and I'm a Florida fan, so I'm partial to the alligator, because he's just the alligator head is just so freaking funny. But
Yeah.
Mike the Tiger is just, you don't get more cool than a live ass tiger on your sideline. You just don't.
You want to jump over to Capitan's show?
We can, sure.
Yeah.
I got to take
All right.
a bathroom break before I do that, but I'll be on in a few minutes. You'll see
Go
if
do
they'll
that.
send me a link.
He sent one. Let me see if can you check real quick and see if you have it.
I will check. Yeah, and I have something here. Okay, he sent me a link, so I'll be in there in a
Good.
few minutes.
Thank you, Raider Nation, for hopping in. Real quickly, just a real recap of our draft. Tom Telesco fucking killed it. Brock Bowers is going to be a generational talent. He's a
Love it.
yak god, and he opens up that entire offense. We've got Trey Tucker taking the ceiling off the defense, Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers working on the outside, and Michael Mayer and Brock Bowers working in the middle. Think of the Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox situation in Buffalo. Brock Bowers is going to be on the field more than Michael Mayer is, and he's an absolute weapon. You get the ball to him in short yardage, and he's going to break all kinds of runs open. We shored up the offensive line with the Cody Whitehair signing and Jackson Powers Johnson. We got better in the defensive backfield. We got a Denzel Perryman clone linebacker who's going to be a serious run stopper. Two cornerbacks that are basic replacements for Amik Robertson, guys that are dogs that like to mix it up. We got a bullet safety who's cousin of Ed Reed. We're gonna be nice with Patrick Graham's defense. We're gonna be nice with what Luke Getsy is going to be able to open up, and with the culture that the AP is bringing to the Raiders, along with Max Crosby teaching these kids fire in their belly, a strong work ethic. Iron sharpens iron. Let's go grind. The future is incredibly bright for this Raiders team, and I am here for it. Thank you guys for watching. Go to Underdog Fantasy. Anything that you put in for your first time, Underdog will match up to $100. So if you put in $100, Underdog will give you $100 on top of that to go play some fantasy. It's real easy. It's the easiest way to play fantasy football. You draft your team, and that's it. You don't have to manage the lineup every week. It's all best ball. Go over to Underdog Fantasy and play that game. Yeah, as I say at the end of every one of these missives, fuck the Broncos.